everybody, Michael Davis here, and welcome to Bone2Pick. We are coming to you today from Brooklyn, New York, and it's really been a pleasure doing all these interviews the past 4 or 5 years, and I can honestly say I've not looked forward to any of them as much as today. Our artist of the month for the month of October is the great Rob Mounsey. Rob is a 6-time Grammy nominee. He is to put it understatedly, it's a wildly successful studio musician, both as a pianist, arranger, producer, conductor. He has worked with a myriad of artists, and I'll name just a few of them to get rolling. James Taylor, Rihanna, Aaron Neville, Michael Franks, Carly Simon, Natalie Cole, Diana Krall, Steely Dan, Paul Simon, Chaka Khan, Eric Clapton, Madonna, Diana Ross, Donald Fagen, Brian Wilson, Karen Carpenter, Idina Menzel, and that's just to name a few. He was the keyboardist on the very famous Simon and Garfunkel 1981 concert in the Park, live concert in Central Park. As a solo artist, he is a founding member of the band Joe Cool. He's also released records on his own label, the Flying Monkey Orchestra, which included Mango Theory and Back in the Pool. He has recorded a couple of CD projects with the great Steve Kahn, great guitarist here in New York. He has composed for a number of film and television projects, including Mike Nichols' Working Girl, Animal House, the HBO hit series Sex and the City. He has won a couple of Emmy Awards for themes for Guiding Light. He has recorded hundreds of jingles as an arranger, composer, and a piano player. And I have to say, I've been very fortunate throughout my career to get to work for Rob. And I think I speak for the entire musical community in New York. Whenever you get a call from Rob Mounsey, you want to bring your A game because you know it's going to be something special. So, Rob, thank you so much for inviting us into your beautiful home and for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you so much. I hope I can live up to all of that build-up. Who is that guy? I'm impressed.
That list was just scratching the surface. It was like, tried to pare it down. It was like, your resume was like reading the New Testament. I had to pare it down. But
thanks. Too kind, as usual.
Well, why don't we just start? I know you were very musical as a young person, very young person. Maybe you could talk about growing up in Ohio and Seattle and just kind of what led you into the world that you've created.
Well, I've told these stories a few times. I don't want to be boring. I thought as a kid, I kind of really wanted to be a painter. I actually wanted to be a visual artist of some kind. I always liked to draw and paint and stuff. And I got into music a little later. I was about 11 years old, and it was kind of an accident. The older I get, the less I want to try to impose order on chaos and try to find patterns that might not even be there. But have an older sister who's 8 years older. Hi, Margaret, if you're out there. Who was in college when I was about 11 and had a music appreciation class where students were learning to follow scores. They weren't musicians, but they were learning to kind of follow along in scores when they listened to classical music. And I thought that's kind of a cool thing to do. Still think that's kind of life-enriching exercise. And so I inherited a couple of those little green Calmus miniature orchestra scores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of them was Mozart Jupiter Symphony in C, and the other one was completely different. It was Berlioz's Fantastic Symphony, which when it's like this, and there are about 35 lines on the score, I probably couldn't even see it now. That's really something to see the paint pot orchestration and every instrument known to man. That's actually how I learned to read music. We had a little electric organ in the house, little one manual electric organ. Later on, there was an organ with 2 manuals and some pedals. I still reach for bass notes with my left foot sometimes from that. But I would just sit with the little scores and read through, read the violin part through the whole symphony, read the viola part, alto clef, read the cello part, and I actually learned to read music that way. And there were some other there's some piano music and some various sheet music around. So I was, it was a strange way to start. I really felt like I wanted to be Stravinsky. I mean, that was my kind of my point of view. You know, later on, so many musicians I know, they had garage bands. You know, they played Satisfaction in the garage or whatever. But I was looking at those scores, and I loved the way that they looked. That was part of it. It was not all just the music, but I loved the way that they looked pictorially. They were like these mysterious diagrams of some other world, you know. They stood for music and sound, but they were beautiful looking, and I was fascinated. And I saw, well, you know, strings at the bottom, percussion, harp in the middle, woodwinds at the top, brass below that, and I thought, well, you know, this is not, I could figure out how to do this. Nobody was teaching me. My family was not, they were not musicians. My dad always claimed to be tone deaf. I don't know, I'm not sure anybody's really quite tone deaf, but that's what he claimed to be. And my mother liked to sing in the, hi Mom, liked to sing in church, but no musicians. Then, you know, I sent away for Rimsky-Korsakov's orchestration manual, which I think is around here somewhere. Principles of Orchestration by Rimsky-Korsakov, great manual, and you know, Walter Piston's harmony and stuff, and so I was a very kind of little music nerd, little skinny little kid with glasses, you know, trying to figure out how to do this stuff. Nobody's teaching me or helping me. It's all kind of self-taught mostly. That was a strange way to start, and then I you know, got some manuscript paper and sharpened some pencils and just started doing it. And fortunately, nobody was around who was willing to say, oh, that's too hard, you can't do that. You know what I mean? You have to go to conservatory to do that. Nobody can do that without being taught how. You can't. Nobody was saying that, so I was just doing it. I'm sure my parents were looking at me thinking, is he actually doing it, or is he just making these dots? They didn't have any way of knowing. I'd probably wonder myself if I were in their place. But then I started, you know, sending stuff away to state competitions and getting, you know, top marks and stuff, even though it was pretty terrible. So clearly I was doing it. So that was the beginning for me. A big part of that for me when I started was, you know, for me it's very pictorial and it's very visual. I guess that's what you would call synesthesia. But you know, when you're working on a record or an arrangement or the production of a recording, I feel the colors and the weights. You know, you're looking at a picture, you feel width, and you feel depth, and you feel like the bottom and the top, and you feel different colors. If you're mixing a record, which I don't really do. Mix engineers are a very special breed of people, and that's a really tough thing to do. But when you're mixing, you're very carefully feeling the weights of all these different elements. You know, it's a little bit like cooking too. Mm-hmm. That's another great metaphor.
Yeah.
You know, there are times when you're making a recording and there's one fabulously great ingredient, and it's so special you don't want anything to interfere with it. And then other times it's this big soup. There's all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff in it, and you can put a lot of stuff in it, and you know.
Yeah,
and everything's just balanced, but there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, very cool. I'm not surprised to hear the width of your approach, because it's clearly the way you approach music, and part of your brilliance comes from that. Well, maybe we're continuing on, talk a little bit about your time. I know you went to Berklee College of Music and were there in the early 70s, an amazing time. So many great musicians were there. What was that experience like for you?
It was a great place then. It's a great place now. John Schofield and I were there at the same time. We got to know each other a little bit then. I haven't seen him much since then, but It was a wonderful place. It had some wonderful teachers, including the legendary Herb Pomeroy, who
Of course, yeah.
was you know, a writing teacher who really opened up the heads of the students in an amazing way. It was amazing how he took what he knew and he made a curriculum out of it somehow. And he would have a few dozen rules that you would learn, and then you could break them when you wanted to, but you absorbed so much just knowing what those rules are, even when you don't obey them, you know. Berkeley was a wonderful place, and I think for one of the big reasons was that you learned so much from the other students. There were a lot of great students from all over the world. Really very impressive. Big talents from the students. So, you know, half of what you get is in the classroom from the teachers,
Sure.
and the other half is from being with these students who are just, you know, on fire.
Yeah.
It's fantastic walking down the hall, walking by the practice rooms, hearing people doing their thing. It's wow.
Yeah.
With a infrared camera, you could see it from space. It's like this glowing blot of like musical energy. You know, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, that's these super fine institutions like Berkeley, but you get so much out of being around the other students. Well, I think you told me one time about how you got from Berkeley and how Leon Pendarvis, I believe, was instrumental in getting you to New York. But I was wondering if you could talk about that transition. And you were kind enough to mention the Dorsey Band before we started the interview, so maybe you could talk a little bit about those if you don't mind.
Sure. Wow. Well, you know, toward the end of my school years there, I took a semester off, and I wasn't really sure I was going to graduate. I wasn't sure I was going to bother. I went back and graduated to make my parents happy, really. But took a semester off, and somebody mentioned going out with this band on a bus. I, you know, joined the Tommy Dorsey band for. Actually, I was there for a month. I was 21 years old, and I was on the band for 2 weeks. I gave my 2 weeks notice. I could not take it. And you know, the whole band is 21 years old. The leader is a really great guy named Murray McEachran, who was a alto sax and trombone player, actually.
Rare devil.
And worked with Benny Goodman back in the old days. And he was about 75. All the kids are about 21. He picked up a singer friend of his named Tony Roma on the road somewhere. He was also about 75. And there are a couple guys in the reed section, they're about 45. And, you know, we're looking at them thinking, do I want to be doing this when I'm 45? You know? The answer was not really that positive. Really, it's tough, though. I mean, you know, we slept on the bus. It's all one-nighters. It's all, you know, over, what do you call them, hit and runs.
Yeah.
You know, hit it, get back on the bus, sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
It's rough. When you're 21, you can do it.
Yeah. We always used to joke on Buddy's band that they'd flip the side of the bus open and bring a hose and just hose us down, then go to the next gig.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, you must have a lot of stories about the Buddy Rich harangues.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole set of them. But
yeah.
But we appreciate you sharing that, Rob. And maybe we could talk about how you got to New York then, and then following that time, and Leon Pendarvis and his influence in that regard.
Well, Pendarvis is my godfather. I mean, he made everything happen for me. I never see him anymore. Pen, are you out there? I'm sorry. I'll call you. I promise. He's a fantastic musician and a wonderful guy. I wasn't that ambitious. It was about 1975. I was kicking around Boston. I played with some singers. I backed up some singers. I did weddings. I played in bars, and I was in a band with with a local singer in Boston named Ralph Graham. Ralph Graham was kind of he wrote his own material. He's kind of a very dramatic, emotional kind of R&B singer. And he was very popular there. We had a band with something like 3 keyboard players. We had I think we had 2 mellotrons on stage at some point trying to play string parts, which is just a nightmare in itself, the mellotron. But anyway, we were playing kind of a dive, terrible place out in Worcester, Massachusetts. Sawdust on the floor, stale beer, kind of, the less said the better maybe. And Ralph had gotten signed to RCA in New York. This was early '76, I think. And they tapped Leon Pendarvis to produce the record, who traveled up to Worcester, Massachusetts to hear the singer and told him afterwards, yes, I'd like to produce your record. Don't bring your band. We'll use New York guys that I know. And then he reconsidered and he said something like, if you want, you can bring that kid on the end.
That's awesome.
That's kind of changed everything for me.
Yeah.
I was the kid on the end, and with the mellotron and the ARP Odyssey, neither of which belonged to me. They were borrowed from someone. And I don't know why, to this day, I'm not sure why he picked me out.
That's awesome. He obviously heard something that he just...
I guess. So I traveled down on Amtrak in my Birkenstocks, to work on the record in the summer of '76 at RCA Studios on 44th Street, which is now gone for a long time. And I met all my buddies, Will Lee, Steve Gadd, George Young, both of the Breckers, and worked with all these people. It was fantastic. It was really exciting. And then he asked me to write a couple of arrangements for the record, which I did. And then at the end of that whole experience, and I didn't mess up apparently at any point, and he said, you should really move down here. If you do, I'll book you on some of my dates, play second keyboards on my dates. And he was producing stuff for Roberta Flack and Cissy Houston, Whitney's mom, and other people. So I moved down on my birthday in December of '76, which is 40 years ago this December. So you can all do the math. And that's what happened. And then I was very busy from about '77 on, and started working a lot as an arranger, and started doing some commercials. I met my friend Elliot Shiner. He introduced me to the guys in Steely Dan. And I met Phil Ramone. I just became one of the first call arrangers for Phil Ramone for about 35 years, till Phil left us a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Well, maybe you could, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about your work with Steely Dan. I know you did work on such an incredible project. Gaucho was one of the seminal recordings, still to this day.
Yeah.
How was it? What kind of an influence did they have on you? And I know you worked on Night Fly with Donald, and
right.
Maybe how that affected you working with those guys.
Oh, it was a big influence. It's very well known. People have told so many stories about those sessions, and they're famously meticulous about the perfection of every little overdub. Mm-hmm. And it sounds sometimes a little maddening or crazy, but the musicians that were on those dates, I don't remember any of them really being unhappy about it, because we knew how great the stuff was. Mm-hmm. Loved the songs, loved the whole experience. I mean, it was difficult, and sometimes you could lose your mind because they weren't happy and you weren't sure what you were doing wrong, because it was so subtle, whatever it was. It was great to get there. You know, my favorite moment was doing the horn arrangement for Babylon Sisters, which is a really interesting group. Like he wanted like the two bass clarinets. You hear the bass clarinets playing the fifths. Bump, it's George Marge and Wally Kane, those two guys. But then there's alto flute. There's one trumpet. There's alto and two tenors, and there's a flugel. Or I don't remember how it went. It was like a funny group. Would you believe I do not have any of those scores?
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't save them.
Wow.
I didn't know. We didn't know. Like we didn't know it was going to be this iconic record that everybody knows about. It was just a day's work. But we did run down that arrangement for Babylon Sisters, and Donald was out in the room with me, reading the score with me and listening to it. And the track ended, and he turned around and he looked inside into the booth at Gary Katz, and he said, "It's perfect." And he didn't change anything. Didn't change a note of it, that was pretty nice, because that didn't happen that often. You know, there was usually something.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you remember who the other horn players were on that session?
I can't remember. I think Randy Brecker was there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he was. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Such a great track. You still hear it quite often.
Yeah.
You know,
And I happen to be very, very proud of 11 notes. There's this great little thing right before, I think it's Randy playing a trumpet solo with a plunger. Mm-hmm. There's a kind of a one bar transition where the tenors play the triplets. I worked on those 11 notes, I think, for about 3 hours, because I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to feel like really left-handed, like the accents falling in funny spots, and it really took a while. So,
wow,
3 hours for those 11 notes. But every time I hear it, I think, yes, that's what I was going for. And that's like a great little moment. And of course, Donald loved it when he heard it. So
that's the highest of praise right there, right?
Right.
You know, it's really fun for me to hear you to describe your
Yeah.
process, because, you know,
Yeah.
I know I speak for all our horn players that get to play your charts. It always feels like this is not just writing down the notes. There's a feeling that comes out of your writing, and
yeah, I hope so.
It's very cool to hear you talk about it. I was wondering if you could. One of the things that is always amazing me about you is, I feel like if somebody called you today and said, "I need something that sounds like Mahler tomorrow afternoon," you could do that. If they said, "I need something that sounds just like James Brown track," or if somebody said, "I need a Neil Hefti bassy chart," can you talk about? I mean, it's one thing to be versatile; it's another thing to do all of those things at the level that you do it, which is the highest level.
Well, thank you.
How would you look at how you develop that level of versatility?
Wow. The Mahler, I'd have to do some homework. The James Brown thing I feel good about.
Okay, Berlioz, how about that?
I don't know. The James Brown I feel good about, and the Neil Hefti I feel great about. I love that stuff madly. The Mahler I'd have to work at it. But I don't know. It's that is the idea that was always an important goal for me, to be very versatile. And I think it really it's just really about listening, and very few people listen very well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. very few people really know how to listen, and in order to really listen well, I think you need to pursue. I'm getting real mystical now. You need to be able to pursue this kind of emptiness. I mean, you have to drop all these mental concepts and mental objects and just experience something. It's very difficult, I think, especially for younger musicians who do this, who are just starting out. It's very difficult to step all the way back and experience it the way that the audience does, that has never heard it before. Might be might be a music-loving audience. It might be a very blasé audience that you're trying to impress. But to be able to step all the way back is really difficult if you're going all the way into the details. That's very hard for people when they're, for example, mixing, as we were talking about. You start hearing details, and all you can hear are the details. You can't hear anything else. You really can't hear it. That's why you have to take what we call the sanity stroll. You have to walk away. Walk away really for 20 minutes or so. Because your nervous system has to change. It isn't, we say it's the ears. It's the ears part of the brain that has to change. Am I making any sense with this question? Yeah. But as far as getting those different styles, I mean, I love all those different styles. I'm a big James Brown fan, and a huge fan of that Neil Hefti bassy stuff, which I adore that stuff. My favorite is Sinatra and the Basie Band doing Please Be Kind. Yeah. Man, what a great... There's absolutely nothing extra in the arrangement. Nothing. And it's so perfect. Swings like mad. The band sounds great. Uncle Frank is killing it. The kid from Red Bank does his patented stuff, which is perfect. What a great record that is. I've listened to that a couple hundred times in the last couple of years. You know it well, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's the best. But Neil Hefti at his best, who was a trumpet player from Nebraska, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was very well said. What you were talking about is something to really think about. From a more, I guess, technical is the word, technical standpoint, and I'm sure this varies from project to project, of course, but I was curious as to what you get, especially from an arranging standpoint, what you're given from a producer, from an artist. I know I had the great fortune, one of my favorite sessions in my entire life was working for you for the James Taylor project, and I'm sure, I was curious as to what James would give you, or what you would get from Phil when Phil was doing all those projects. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure it varies, but I was curious as to what.
It varies a lot. From Phil, I got very little, a few words. James said to me he had that song "Stretch of the Highway." I don't know if you remember. Two trombones, two tenors, and Barry, right? And he said, I'm kind of going for that Steely Dan thing. I said, okay. I know what that is.
You can do this.
Yeah, right. So you came to the right place. He said, I know, that's why. And at the end of that song, there's a long outro where he's just kind of doing some ad-libs, and there are a couple background vocals things. And so the horn section kind of goes through a little catalog of different ideas. There's a little parade of ideas, which I thought was really fun. And they're all there on the record. And for something like that, I don't play any brass instruments. I got to start. What should I start with?
I think you're fine, Rob, without it.
Yeah, but to play one, I used to play. I was a kind of a mediocre clarinetist, and I learned a little saxophones and some flutes. I can get a kind of a decent sound on the flute. But what I like to do when I'm writing that stuff, like on Stretch of the Highway, is listen to the track and sort of stand up and walk around and go like this. Seriously, and just kind of. What would it be like to play on stage? What if the guys were standing up and just grooving along to it? And you start to hear and feel stuff. You just don't feel them or hear them when you're sitting down with a pencil in your hand. It's not the same thing. You get up and go like this, and stuff starts to come out. And you also start to really feel how it can never get in the singer's way. But the singer's going to leave some spaces. It can be kind of involved as long as it doesn't step on him. I guess we're circling around the same question, but it's about, it's about listening and feeling, and it's not, it's just not always about something that's terribly cerebral or methodical.
I've always thought, I mean, for those of you who haven't heard that track, Stretch of the Highway, it's I mean, to me, your arrangement, it's a beautiful tune, of course, and James sounds
It's a great
incredible. But your arrangement, to me, takes it from really great to incredibly special. And I think it's funny that you would say that about playing a horn, because from our perspective as horn players, it's so natural. It just feels like, wow, this is just this is what I would play if I had your mind.
That's an important part of it. Donald used to say to me, you know, I could do this, but it would take me a month, and it takes you half an hour. So will you do it? And that's why it's important for guys like me for you to send me your Bonetown CD, a yellow CD with a
Bone Alone with the trombones, yeah,
with the trombones, because man, we need to remember. Listen to the instrument from guys who really, really play it, and what all that stuff it can do. You forget, it can do all this different stuff. Oh man, because maybe a young arranger would think, the trombones, it's like when in the orchestra, when the strings are all bowing their heads off and the trumpets are blasting, and you still want it to be louder, send the trombones in, because they'll blow the whole orchestra off stage, and they can play so loud. But then, what about when they play trombone choir and it's really soft? It's so beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so pretty. You need to remember all the stuff they can do. So when I was out with Idina Menzel doing a lot of orchestra concerts, we spent a lot of time with the late great Marvin Hamlish, who was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I got a nice compliment from him one time, because I had written her whole orchestra book. And he was going through one of these quick rehearsals. You get 3 hours of rehearsal and you hit it, And he said, I put these charts up and they play. And that was it. But that was a really nice compliment, because that's the idea. You have only 3 hours of rehearsal. Mm-hmm. The players, the instrumentalists, look at it, and they should kind of sort of recognize it. They say, oh yeah, this is a part for me. It's a trombonist says, yes, this is a trombone part. This makes me sound good, makes me look good. This is why I have practiced for decades to sound great. So I can do like this. And there's enough to dig into, there's enough that's involved that they can dig into it, but it's not so crazy it needs too much rehearsal time, which you never get. Mm-hmm. They face a lot of terrible arrangements, the Pops orchestras.
Oh, I can
terrible
imagine.
Stuff.
Yeah.
People coming in with 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. There aren't enough of them to go around, and they're all whole notes, and it's like a big keyboard up there. And they cop an attitude right away. The orchestra does. They all look unhappy, and they say, "Why are we here? Get a sampler and one guy."
Right.
So they're really happy when they see stuff that really is for them, and it lays right for them, and it makes them sound good.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of your brilliance. Really is the word. But you make the instruments sound good without pushing them to the limit. And I think the arrangement has such quality and texture to it that it doesn't demand that it be the absolute best player who's ever played that instrument to pull it off. It's playable by a large number of professional ability players.
Sometimes I'm afraid that's why I never win any of those arranging Grammys. You know what I mean? Because the ones that tend to win are the ones that sometimes I really don't like them, because they're good, but they're really show-offy, and the arrangements are crowding the singer. They're upstaging the star. Not good. Not good.
Yeah.
I mean, the average music lover should be able to listen to the singer, feel like it's a great experience, never think about the arrangement. But it's great support. And one of those guys, I think maybe it was Nelson Riddle or one of those old lions, said, it's really not enough to write a good arrangement of a song that a singer can sing with this. The hard thing is to write the right arrangement for that artist and know who that artist is and support that artist the right way, the personality of that person, You and I just did this great project with Brett Eldridge.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great
project.
young
Incredible.
Nashville star, wonderful guy.
Amazing.
Who did a swinging big band Christmas record. It's called Glow. Every home should have one.
At least one.
At least
say
one.
two, just in case for the car.
Released soon. Great record. Lead trombone. And great stuff. But, you know, we didn't have much time. And I co-produced with my friend Jay Newland, the engineer. And we got Brett to fly up and sit with us for an afternoon, sing through a few songs, play the piano, try some different keys. He breaks out the bottle of bourbon, pours everybody a finger or two of that. But that meant so much. Just sitting with him, we didn't really know him, but sitting with him, not just listening to him sing, but just hanging out. Mm. You get to like a feeling of who somebody is as a performer. And then I felt like I knew who that guy was. And I knew I knew what the feeling of the thing was. Mm. You really wanted to do this Rat Pack Christmas thing. And it has a little bit of a brash quality, a little bit of a bluesy thing. And he had a ball. We all had so much fun. I think it worked great.
Oh, it was an incredible experience. Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah.
How much time did you have? Like once you met before the?
Couple weeks.
Wow. There's a lot of charts.
About 13, I think. Might have been 2.5 weeks. That's a little tight. I did 14 big orchestra arrangements for Idina Menzel when we started doing her pops orchestra stuff, and this was for the big orchestras, for woodwinds and threes and 11 brass and all that. Mm-hmm. And I had about 14 days to do 14 of those, which was I was pushing it. I was a little spiral-eyed, but it worked.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and she's another very special personality because she's got this big instrument, and it's very dramatic, mm-hmm. and it's very emotional, and her fans go completely berserk for her.
Yeah.
But she's somebody who, when the 11 brass in the St. Louis Symphony are hitting it at double forte, she can get in front of it.
Yeah.
And it works great, and it's just, holy smoke, what's happening?
Well, if we can shift gears a little bit, I'd like to spend some time talking about your solo career, which encompasses more from a compositional standpoint as well as from a pianistic standpoint, of course, arranging and producing as well. One of the first bands that I heard when I moved to New York in the 80s was Joe Cool, and you guys would play at McKell's. And for those of you who don't know Joe Cool, it was an all-star band. It was Rob on keyboards, Will Lee on bass, Chris Parker on drums, and Jeff Marinoff on guitar. So basically the best of the best on every instrument in New York. And love that band. I know you guys did one recording with that and a Japanese tour. And then, of course, you did Mango Theory and Back in the Pool.
Yeah. Back in the Pool was first.
Okay.
And,
and maybe you could talk about, I know the work you did with Steve Kahn, maybe you could just talk about how you like doing the solo career thing and how that's evolved over the years.
I'm not sure career is the right... Career is pushing it, I'm not sure what it was.
Well, you've made some great records, let's put it that way.
Yeah, Alan Watts in his autobiography said, I don't want a career, I want a careen. And that's I feel like that's kind of what I have had. I was never kind of career ambitious or career oriented. I was, kind of distrusted that word a little bit. Before Joe Cool, I have to mention a band called Ussin with George Young, led by the great George Young. Mm-hmm. That was the greatest. I loved Joe Cool and I loved being with those guys. They're all my buddies. But Ussin was probably the greatest performing band that I was ever part of.
Wow.
That was around 78, 79. We used to play at a bar called Eric up on 2nd Avenue. 2nd Avenue and 88th, every 2 weeks. led by George Young, who, for people who do not know, was maybe one of the greatest reed players of all time. Hi Georgie, multi-instrumental saxophonist, woodwinds, will play a world-beating solo on piccolo, the alto flute, forget it, anything. And our late friend Lou Soloff, who I know you did an interview with, I was going to watch it. It just still hurts too much to lose that guy. He was really a close friend of mine. It really hurt to lose him like that.
Yeah, it's awful.
But George and Louis together in that band, again with Will, percussionist Jimmy Malin, who's not with us anymore. The original drummer is Barry Lazarowitz. And I wrote a lot of tunes for that band, some far out kind of stuff, but they were very popular. And with the two of them, with George and Louis, when we would do 3 sets a night, and it got like so unbelievably exciting. The band got to be was having so much fun. Somebody would play like one rhythmic figure, and the next time around, everybody would jump on it and slam it because everybody heard it the first time. And we would do a lot of stuff like that, and it got so exciting. People would jump up on the tables and scream and not know where they were. I mean, people went crazy. That was a thing that maybe it just happened once, and it can only happen once. But that was. Then there was Joe Cool with my friends, and we did a Japanese record, and we actually toured Japan. We toured a lot of cities in Japan. And somebody, I think it was Ron Goldstein, who was a record executive, was with a little label called Private Music, and he suggested that I make a solo record of electronic music. So I made one piece, and it was called, which one was first? It's either a piece called Mr. Graffito or a piece called Green Feathers. I forget, and I sent one, and they said, do you have any other material? And I thought that was a funny question. I said, I am material. I made another few more, and then they turned it down. But somebody else picked it up, a little label in Milwaukee, and so I had this record called Dig, which was all me. It was all electronic music, and that was not really a happy experience. I left those people. Then I made the record Back in the Pool, on which I had a lot of guests.
You had Lou and George both quite a bit on that, right?
George and Toots, the late Toots Thielmans, my friends Will and Christopher and Jeffrey Mironoff. Steve Kahn is on it. There was that one that did okay. And then I made another one called Mango Theory after that.
Which one is the one with orange thing on it?
That's on Back in the Pool.
Back in the Pool. I love that.
I like the orange thing. It's not about any presidential candidates. This was years ago. It's 25 years ago? Something like that. It's 1990. Something like that. They were fun. I get the occasional fan email from like some guy in Denmark. So I love that record. I say thank you very much.
And you did it was Local Color you did with Steve Kahn,
Local
right?
Color,
You got a Grammy nomination for that, if I'm not
yes.
mistaken?
And we were Grammy nominated as a New Age album, which Steve thought was very, very funny. See, we were not aware we had made a New Age record. Apparently we had. And that was Steve's idea, and Steve just, he had sort of his own process of, we would kind of get together and we would sort of jam and like record these long jams and pick stuff out and then try to structure them. A little bit like Salvador Dali's paranoid critical method. Salvador Dali said, I have the paranoid critical method. First, I go nuts, and I do a bunch of crazy, nutty stuff, and then I become sane, and I evaluate the crazy things I did. So it was a little bit like that. And that's how a lot of that stuff happened.
Well,
And then the second one was called You Are Here, which was about 10 years later.
for those of you who don't know, these records we were just describing, definitely worth checking out. I have them all, and really still go back and check them out. They're fantastic records.
So you're the guy. So you're the guy that bought those records.
We were talking before the interview started about New York and Los Angeles, and I kind of wanted to combine this into one. Maybe it's too big of a question, but one big question. And I know you started off as a paper and pencil guy, for a better way to put it, and now your technical chops are at the wazoo already now. But I was wondering if you could kind of talk about not only how the technology, of course, has evolved. We all know that, but what are the advantages? And I think there are some disadvantages that has gone away from paper and pencil. I was curious your thoughts about that, and then maybe tie that into, now we're looking at how the scene has evolved, and certainly New York is one scene and Los Angeles is another scene. They're evolving in a parallel way, but also different ways. And maybe if you could, I know it's a kind of a lot to throw out there, but just your thoughts on those type of things.
Well, about the actual writing, I'm really not happy right now because I can't quite figure out what the process is anymore. It used to be for me, everything would be the big paper and the 18-inch ruler and half a dozen sharpened pencils, and kind of have a piano nearby so you don't get too lost. And make the big bar lines. And I'd spend a long time just laying out these pages, have a little sketch on manuscript paper of like rehearsal letters and bar numbers, because every single musician has to have every bar numbered. Very important. And rehearsal letters that make total sense.
Right.
And then I'd lay this out, and then I'd be have all this written out. Now, when I was doing 6 years ago, when I started doing Idina stuff, I was still doing that. And I would take it to a printer who scanned it and emailed it to a copyist. Hi, Todd. Just shout outs to my friends. Copyist who would enter it into Finale, then make the scores and the parts and stuff that way. I mean, I go way back to, guys with Osmoroid pens, and they're all alcoholics, and they're like, that was another world.
Yeah.
But now, the budgets don't really allow for copyists. I type stuff into Sibelius. So now I'm kind of making these sketches of 6 or 8 staves where I decide where stuff goes, and I don't really flesh it out till I'm typing it in. And every project has a little bit of a different process, and I'm confused. I'm just I'm struggling with what the process is, because I don't love typing it into a laptop. It's not making me happy. Having a big pile of big paper made me happy. So what do? I don't know.
Keep doing what you're doing. That would be my advice.
I don't know. I mean, the process is still changing, and now I can lay out these scores and parts as PDFs, and make a giant zip file, and send it to somebody who does all the printing and taping and binding and all that stuff. But process keeps changing, and it's not. I don't know. I'm still struggling with it.
And how about this is?
I only answered part of your question, because that was a big question.
Yeah, it was a little
with all
too
these
big.
parts.
Actually, I should have broken that down better.
Yeah. I forget the other parts now, but
Talking about just the general scene in New York, but also maybe contrasting that to Los Angeles. I know you've had a lot of experience working in LA and just being around both major centers for a long time.
I've worked there, and I have a lot of friends in LA and so forth. It's not really my place. I'm a New Yorker, and I was just saying something. I try not to badmouth anybody, but we just did this big band record here at Avatar A, and I've done projects like that in LA, and they were good, but I like the LA thing. I like the New York thing better. I just feel like something about the musicians and the energy is just. But of course, there are great musicians there and great studios there, and kind of a different level of comfort. You drive up in your little rented Celica, and get your badge, go in the studio. It's a whole different experience. Of course, again, I go back to the days when we had A&R 48th Street and A&R 7th Avenue, and you step over the homeless people and go up in an elevator that sounded like it was going to break on the way up.
And sometimes did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue, is where we're talking about studios getting down to. I mean, Avatar is one of the few remaining, and from what I hear, it's
and for sale.
Not long for the earth.
For
Hopefully
sale.
it is, but
MSR, which was Right Track, which was Legacy, is now out of business. So it's pretty alarming.
I have a couple more questions, and I won't take up your whole afternoon, Rob. This has been so just an amazing experience to hear your thoughts on things. One of the things that had totally amazes me about you is things can seem, not chaotic is the wrong word, intense. Things can seem very intense in the studio, and you have this way of just being very centered and very calm. And I know I can speak for my colleagues. There are times when you'll walk out and you might just say, guys, we really got to get this in tune. It might be that simple or calm, and you just feel like, oh God, I let Rob down. This is like, I got to get this. Man. And it's just this. Part of it, I think we all sense it from hearing you talk today. Part of it's your personality, but I always find it to just be a very valuable lesson, the calm and quietness. Obviously, you're very intense, and the knowledge is through and through there, but is that something that you consciously think about, trying to remain calm and your approach, or is it just something that has come naturally to you through your years of experience?
I don't know. You said something about this. I'm happy to hear that I appear calm, because I might not be. I might be a little stressed out if there's something that people are not happy about. But I was thinking about that. Basically, when I think about those sessions that we just did with that great band, it's not hard for me to feel calm and act calm, because I'm actually really happy. I'm like really happy to be there, really happy to be with all these musicians, like really happy to be doing this. And while the music's happening, nothing else matters. The rest of the world just stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, life makes no sense. This human life of ours makes no sense. And it's frustrating until, like, the music's happening and we're doing it, and then everything makes sense for a while. You know what I mean? It all makes sense. It's all working. It feels great. We're having a ball. Everybody's loving it. So, I'm just happy while it's going on. There aren't that many. I can't think of that many sessions that have been real problems. That have been real. Maybe some sessions that I've just been called as a player or something, and somebody else is in charge of making it all work. And I see that it's not going well, and there's not much I can do, and it's fortunately not my responsibility, so I can just sit there and watch. But I remember a huge session for a Japanese pop group called SMAP, which is now going, they're retiring, those guys. They were like kind of like a boy group, like a teenage boy group. Huge J-pop thing. And they would come to New York and do enormous sessions, huge orchestras. And I had some stuff, and then they had like a couple young Japanese guys doing arrangements with this big string section, and they had written an arrangement. It was like one of those, like Jerry Hay and the horn section would do. You guys would do it. It would be like no problem. Like you were on the Billy Porter thing.
Oh yeah, right.
And we had some stuff like that.
Yeah.
This stuff is really fun. It's like that Jerry Hay style a little bit.
Right.
Horn section gets it. So violinists are not going to play that.
Right.
I mean, you got to really, and I've been through maybe 3 generations of string players since the late 70s. The younger players will go there a little more and get it, a little more, the rhythmic thing, the syncopated rhythmic thing.
Mm-hmm.
The older guys wouldn't do it at all, but really it's not friendly for string players.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the Japanese guys, they played it on samples. They played string samples and they loved it. And so play it. And it's a disaster because they can't, it's not for them. They can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying for an hour and a half to play 4 bars. They can't get it, you know. So I've watched stuff like that happen, but that's why the stuff has to be right for them.
Yeah.
You know? And it can be a little bit fancy, but if it's too fancy, it becomes unplayable and unrecordable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big problem. And a lot of people in the room, and like, you know, you see money flying out the window. It's expensive.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really good advice for anybody who's in that position.
I can't think of any unhappy moments we had on the Brett Eldridge thing. It was just so much.
Oh no, it's
so much fun. And Brett, as a young guy, just turned 30 years old, was doing it just great, total natural.
It was, all of us were amazed. Like he would just stand
Yeah.
there and sing and sound. It's every take sounded like it could be the final.
Just
final
great,
take.
fun guy to work with. And of course, he came out in the room and he had my favorite experience is when I'm sitting with 5 saxophones and 8 brass and they're blowing right at me, loud. They're playing these big crunchy chords, like all the funny notes around, and loud, and like, it's like, oh man. It's like, I don't know what to compare it to. It's like this Olympic event. It's like having, it's like somebody like just put this most amazing big ice cream sundae in front of you. Like, boom! You're like, yes! And he came out and heard that, and he was just, so.
Well,
that was really fun. I certainly don't remember any struggles.
Yeah, that was an incredible session,
Yeah.
to say the least. Well, they just added golf back to the Olympics. Now maybe brass should be the new thing we'll add to the Tokyo Olympics.
Swing, gold medal in swing. Those about to swing salute you.
Well, Rob, I was wondering if we could, as we close out here, I just kind of wanted to throw out some names at you and just kind of a rapid fire. Give me a sentence or two of your first thing that comes to your mind.
All right. Try to say only nice things.
Let's start with one that we touched on a little bit, but the great James Taylor.
The greatest guy, just as great a guy as you would think he is, from listening to his records. Really wonderful guy. A very funny guy, extremely smart, interested in a million things. Worked on a Christmas record with him years ago, and we started talking about what really happened at the Salem witch trials. You ever hear that story?
No.
Why those poor girls went nuts because they think maybe it was moldy wheat because they had a warm winter and the wheat got ergotism and so they were tripping. This was a Scientific American. James Taylor was really into this, and so was I. So it was a great,
Great.
He's the best.
The late great Natalie Cole.
Genius did not skip a generation. In her case, it hit her father and it hit her just as hard. She was just a great musician, extremely smart, great person. Really hurt to lose her too this past year. We did a wonderful album called Stardust. There were a number of, I did stuff with Phil Ramone. I did maybe 4 or 5 big arrangements on it, including one of my favorite things, a very sad live arrangement of He Was Too Good to Me, Rodgers and Hart, starring Wynton Marsalis, live trumpet solo with live orchestra, conducted with her singing. It was take 2. Check it out. It's really, if you want to cry, if you want to have a good cry.
Beautiful.
Yes, she was fantastic, and I remember doing what's the Dinah Washington thing? What a Difference a Day Made. And Natalie's singing in the room with us, and David Fink is playing upright. And she gets to the last 8 bars. It's heaven when you find romance on your menu. And she's showing us very subtly exactly where the pocket is. Remember David Fink going like this? And smiling and saying, oh, it's going to be like this. Like when we listen to playback, we're going to really want to listen to her instead of trying to listen around her and see if we did okay. Because she was a super musician,
Awesome.
She was something else.
Shifting gears here, Madonna.
Madonna, as a singer, I've always felt that she was an excellent dancer. That was, but I want to tell you, I did a #1 record with her, Crazy for You, and the oboe solos on the record were George Martin. That was Madonna's idea, and it was a good idea.
Wow.
And Madonna said, this is for a movie. You know how there's always like an oboe solo or something in a movie? I said, yeah. I said, what about if we had like some oboe solos on this? I said, okay. And we called up George, and I had like some manuscript paper and a pencil, and I wrote these little lines, ba, 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 little far away lyrical oboe lines. And George came and played. Of course, he was one of the great ones, and but that was Madonna's idea. That was a good idea.
Wow, great story.
Yeah.
Burt Bacharach.
Well, legendary. Got to know him a little bit. I worked with him and Elvis Costello on that record that they did. And then another real high point for me was going with Phil Ramone to the White House and doing the concert in the East Room for the Obamas and Burt and Hal David's wife, Eunice, was there. Hal was ill, and he died not long after. Mm-hmm. Burt was quite an amazing guy, one of a kind. And we performed with a lot of wonderful people, most notably Stevie Wonder. And there's a great video on YouTube where we accompanied Stevie playing. He sang Alfie, and then he picks up the harmonica, makes a little modulation, and he plays the whole song on the harmonica. And we accompany him, rubato, the whole thing is con la voce kind of. And I'm watching Stevie's back. I'm trying to play the Rhodes and sort of conduct the band. We're sweating bullets, but that was a really great moment. And of course, being on stage with Stevie, the singers are just, he's kind of like a god that walks among us a little bit to all the musicians and the singers. So it was pretty wonderful.
Very cool.
And I think Burt was very happy.
Here's one that I remember this session very vividly, and I saw it on your list of credits, which is great. But Lyle Lovett, and in particular the chart you did on Summer Wind, which I think rivals.
Were you on that?
I was, yeah.
That was really fun.
Long ago. I mean, I remember thinking this is as good as the Sinatra chart. And
with Russ Titleman.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really fun. And I love Lyle, and he's just the greatest guy. And he loved the chart, and he
sounded great. I remember he was just
he loved doing it. And we did it with it was a smallish, it was like imitation big band. It was only about 7 horns. Mm-hmm. And then it was a string section of only violins and violas. Right? Strings were in the room with us.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
We did live strings, live rhythm, live horns. Yeah, it was very unusual. And it was only high strings kind of subdivided. It's kind of in the style of the old Sinatra record a little bit. That was big fun.
I remember being impressed that Lyle was there and singing and just digging in.
And Lyle was with us on the Burt Bacharach thing too. He sang a couple things. Always something there to remind me, he sang. He did a duet with Sheryl Crow, which was great. I'll Never Fall in Love Again, which was just great. And Sheryl Crow is another one. I love her. She's really great person, total pro.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, let's shift a little bit to the instrumental side. You did a record for Eddie Daniels called Blackwood, which I think was your tune was Cruisin'. Is that one of your tunes?
Cruise.
Or Cruise, yeah.
I think
it was the second tune.
Yeah, that's my little tune. That's my little
Love
composition.
that tune.
There's another one called P.I.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. private
Anyway,
investigators.
Talk about working with Eddie a little bit, who's
Eddie
an
was
intense
great.
guy.
Eddie was great. Eddie was great. I love Eddie. I haven't seen him in a zillion years. Eddie, are you out there? He's a wonderful guy. And that's interesting. You should bring him up because before that, he did a record called, I think it was called Morning Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Columbia. Imagine, like Columbia Records making a jazz clarinet record. Imagine that getting signed today. It's like, what? You signed a jazz clarinet record? And I had some string section stuff, and I did a couple little string charts for him, and that's when I first met another of the great ones, George Colandrelli.
Wow.
And that's where I learned to steal from the best. Supposedly Picasso said that, you know, a good artist borrows, a great artist steals. It's ascribed to Picasso. Nobody knows if he actually said that. But I was on a session with Colandrelli, and he put his thing up, and there was this beautiful melodic string music, and like a big light bulb went on over my head. It changed the way that I write for them. Hearing that one little chart of his. So, of course. Like you're writing a string arrangement, you write string music for them. You know, you don't write something that could be a horn section or it could be a keyboard part. It's melodic music for violins and cellos. You know, it was so beautiful. It was simple. It was simple and great. So, Maestro, I've been ripping you off ever since, with no shame whatsoever.
And the last name, this one I didn't know that you'd worked with her, but maybe you could talk a little bit about working with Karen Carpenter.
Oh yeah. Well, I worked a lot with Phil Ramone on that last record that she made right before she died. She was a great person. Everybody loved her. She was funny. We were talking about this before. She's funny because she's kind of the good girl from Downey, California. Like when the musicians cursed, she sort of blanched a little bit. Like, oh, please, those words bother me. But great person, extremely smart, great musician, very good drummer.
Yeah.
Which not everyone knows.
Yeah.
She didn't really know she could sing. I mean, she was a drummer. And she discovered that she could sing, and she had that great, really low, buttery voice, and people just realized they loved it. So Nat King Cole was, you know, he was a piano player. He found out, oh, I guess I can sing. I think
It's hard to believe,
I think
right?
Diana Krall has a little bit of that. I really like her playing a lot. And I love her singing too, but.
And another person you've done a lot of work with.
A little bit, not a lot,
Okay.
a little. She's great too, and you know, she came at the singing part sideways, and so did Karen. Richard did not like that record, and the record went on the shelf for 20 years, over 20
really?
years.
Wow.
Nobody heard it for 20 years. When it was finally released, decades after she died, it was stylistically, I think, dated. But she recorded a song of mine. I haven't been a songwriter that much. There's a song called Guess I Just Lost My Head, which is an early song. I was about 24. And she recorded my song. She liked it.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, I can't thank you enough for taking time out and thank you for inviting us into your beautiful home. And
thanks. I'm honored to be one of the few non-brass players on your long roster.
We figured it's time to branch out a little, and we might as well start at the top and go from there.
Thanks.
Just real quick, like, what's the future hold for you? What are your what are your plans right now? And I'm sure part of it is keep doing the amazing work you're doing, and what comes to you.
Question mark. Who knows? We're going to Las Vegas to do a big show for Brett Eldridge for TV for his record, and I've got a big project for my friends, the Cincinnati Pops, for a concert that's happening at holiday time.
Nice. That's one of the really great pops orchestras. Cincinnati,
Yes.
almost underrated in a way.
Yes, so. And my friend the maestro John Morris Russell is kind of a hard-driving entrepreneur, impresario who's always thinking of new events, and he's a great guy and done some really interesting, fun stuff with them.
Very cool. Well,
yeah, so there's that.
we will all be looking to see what Rob
Thanks.
Mounsey's next contributions to our world. And
it's a careen. It's not a career. It's a careen.
It's an extraordinary careen, then.
Thanks. Thanks. Try not to have any serious collisions. There have been no fatalities.
Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. We will see you next time on Bone to Pick.